You're standing in your kitchen, just making a cup of coffee. The sun is hitting the counter in this perfectly mundane, beautiful way, and for a split second you think, I should post this. And then the weight hits you. You start mentally framing the shot. You wonder if your kitchen looks intentional enough. You think about who might see it: your ex, your boss, that person from high school you haven't talked to in a decade. Suddenly, you aren't a person making coffee anymore. You're a curator managing a museum of yourself. You feel this cold, vibrating anxiety because you realize that the moment you share it, you are no longer private. You are perceivable. And being perceivable feels like being hunted. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from living under a digital panopticon. We've been told that visibility is a gift, that having a voice and a platform is the ultimate freedom. But for many of us, it feels like a cage. We've lost the right to be messy, to be inconsistent, or to simply exist without being documented. We are the first generation in human history who has to consider the gaze of 1,000 invisible strangers before we even finish our breakfast. If you feel a constant urge to disappear, I need you to understand that this isn't social anxiety in the traditional sense. It's a logical response to an environment that has weaponized our social instincts. We are experiencing a systemic burnout of the self. We've been forced into a state of hyperperceivability, where every digital footprint we leave is archived, analyzed, and available for judgment forever. You aren't shy, you're just exhausted from performing a version of yourself that never gets to go off stage. This is a theft of the unobserved life. Historically, most of our lives were lived in the shadows, and that was a good thing. The shadows are where we grow, where we make mistakes, and where we develop a personality that isn't for sale. But in 2026, the shadows have been colonized by the feed. We've been told that if a moment wasn't captured, it didn't happen. But the truth is the opposite. If a moment is captured, it often stops belonging to you. It belongs to the audience. Let's look at the first layer of this anxiety: the collapse of context. In the physical world, you are a different person to your mother than you are to your coworkers. You have different versions of yourself that exist in different rooms. But the internet collapses all those rooms into one. When you post, you are speaking to everyone you've ever met, all at once, forever. This creates a state of performative paralysis. Because you're being perceived by so many conflicting groups, you end up sanitizing yourself. You become a flattened self, a version of you that is inoffensive, aesthetic, and ultimately hollow. We've turned our identities into brands because brands are safer than humans. A brand can be managed. A human is just too vulnerable to be perceived at this scale. The second layer is what I call the surveillance of the aesthetic. We've moved past just sharing what we do. Now we have to share how it looks. We've turned our actual physical lives into content for a digital hyperreality. This creates a constant internal monologue of, how am I being seen, even when you're alone? You start to view your own life through the eyes of an imaginary observer. You choose the book with the better cover, the cafe with the better lighting, the hobby that is more readable on a grid. This is the ultimate form of self-alienation. You are ghosting your own experience to provide data for the simulation. The anxiety you feel is the part of you that knows you're living a secondary life, while the primary one, the real, unrecorded one, is gathering dust. The third layer is the archive fear. We know, intuitively, that the internet is written in ink. Every take, Every photo and every phase of our lives is stored in a digital permanent record. This robs us of the right to change. Human beings are meant to be fluid. We are meant to outgrow our past selves. But when your past is always perceivable, it acts as an anchor. We feel the pressure to be consistent with a version of ourselves that we don't even recognize anymore. We are haunted by our own digital ghosts. This creates a state of self-surveillance, where we police our current thoughts to protect our future reputation. We've traded the freedom of being someone for the security of being something. So, how do we find the shadows again? How do we reclaim the right to be unobserved? The shift isn't about quitting the internet. It's a mental model shift from broadcast to presence. Shex. A broadcast model assumes that the value of an experience is determined by its reach. If you didn't share it, it's lost. A presence model assumes that the value of an experience is determined by its depth. The things you keep for yourself are actually the most valuable because they are the only things that are truly yours. It's about realizing that privacy is not about having something to hide, it's about having something to protect. We have to reclaim the void, the moments that are too messy, too boring, or too sacred to be perceivable. We have to learn to be invisible again. This means intentionally choosing to let some moments die in the physical world. It means realizing that being liked by 1,000 people you don't know is a poor substitute for being known by 5 people you love. I'm not saying you should never post a photo of your coffee. I'm saying you should ask yourself who you're making the coffee for. If the answer is the people watching, then you aren't drinking coffee. You're performing a ritual of consumption. The most radical thing you can do in 2026 is to be a mystery. To have thoughts that aren't on a thread. To have a face that isn't on a feed. To be someone who cannot be fully perceived by an algorithm. Your soul needs a place where the lights are off. It needs a room where no one is looking. Because it's only when no one is looking that you can finally see yourself. Before you move on tonight, I want you to look around your room and find one thing, just one, that you love, but that you have never shown to the internet. Look at it. Really look at it. Feel how much more real it feels because it only exists for you. Why does it feel so much safer when it's just between you and the room? Keep it that way. Good night.